Tonight, one person fatally stabbed, 2 others injured after a violent incident in the middle of Melbourne. Also tonight, revelations a car carrying 4 passengers who perished in Central Australia had a flat tyre and no petrol. We look inside Dondale to view the aftermath of Tuesday's violent riot. And the wait is over, the Territory's longest-running native title claim finally recognised. Good evening, Emilie Gramenz with ABC News. One person is dead and 2 others have been taken to hospital with stab wounds following an attack in the heart of Melbourne CBD. After receiving reports of a car on fire, police confronted a man armed with a knife earlier this afternoon. The man lunged at police with a knife and they shot him in the chest. He is reported to be in a critical condition. Reporter Ben Knight is on the scene. Ben, tell us what you know so far.
Well, what we know is that there was a major incident right in the centre of Melbourne on a busy Friday afternoon. Hundreds of people around who witnessed what happened. What happened, as far as we know, is that a vehicle was speeding down Bourke Street, one of the main streets here in the centre of Melbourne, then crashed and burst into flame. When one witness told the ABC that they saw the man who got out of the car throw something into it, they said something like a bomb. That obviously is not confirmed. Very little is at the moment. But what we do know is that there was a lot of flame and a lot of smoke. But it's what happened after that that, of course, is most distressing. Witnesses say the man got out of the vehicle and began randomly stabbing people around him. Now, obviously, this is the centre of Melbourne, and as I say, busy Friday afternoon, there were a lot of police around here all the time. 2 officers very quickly on the scene, and they confronted this man. We saw those officers trying to fend the man off, other bystanders getting involved, one even using a shopping trolley to try to subdue the man. But eventually one of those officers drew a weapon and fired. That man who was allegedly attacking those bystanders was shot in the chest, and he's now under guard in hospital. But let's hear what one witness told the ABC this afternoon on the scene.
We saw the police grab the guy and eventually shoot him. Yeah, I think there were about 3 shots. Yeah, he didn't have a gun. He attacked the police with his hands. Everyone was in panic and running, basically. So, yeah, it was shocking.
It appears police responded very quickly. What are they saying?
Well, absolutely, they responded very quickly. It was a huge police presence here, and also, of course, ambulances, all sorts of emergency services. Right here in the centre of Melbourne was essentially in lockdown. You can clearly see behind me it's still a closed area, but it's the investigators who are on the scene at the moment. So perhaps most importantly, what police are saying is they're not looking for any other offender. Also, what they're saying is they don't know of any potential links to terrorism. They say they're keeping an open mind on that. Other than that, not a lot to say, but we understand police will be addressing the media again in a short time from now, so of course we're expecting an update then. But let's hear what they had to say when they first addressed the media just a short time ago here in Melbourne.
Nearby police quickly responded to the incident. As they got out of the car, they were confronted by a male brandishing a knife and threatening them. At the same time, passers-by were calling out that members of the public had been stabbed. Police shot the male in the chest, and he is now in a critical condition under guard at hospital. 3 people have been stabbed. Unfortunately, one is deceased at the scene. 2 other victims are currently at hospital.
Ben, do we know if the area has been made safe yet?
Well, we know it's been made safe, but it's still closed off. In fact, we can still see detectives on the scene, obviously gathering evidence and finding out what happened here today. But while the centre of Melbourne, where I'm standing, is still roped off or tethered off with the police tape, as you can probably see behind me, outside me around the rest of the city, it does appear to be a pretty normal Friday evening. The crowds are still here, people are still out shopping, eating in the bars and the cafes, and it's expected, in fact, that this area behind me will open up reasonably soon.
Ben Knight in Melbourne, thank you. The car 4 people were travelling in before they died in remote Central Australia was found with no petrol and a flat tyre. Police believe the group was meant to meet up with family before they broke down and ended up perishing almost 400 kilometres north of Alice Springs.
Temperatures hit almost 40 degrees the day 4 people became stranded on this outback road. The bodies of 2 19-year-olds and their 3-year-old child were discovered on Wednesday by a passing driver. Following an air and land search of the area, police found the body of a child, believed to be a 12-year-old who was travelling with the group.
It's with a heavy heart that police report locating the body of a small child yesterday afternoon at about 2 p.m. on a remote access road.
His body was only 120 metres away from the other 3 people.
120 metres doesn't sound like much, but in the context of a rugged, remote, vast location, it was certainly something that we did not locate within our early search.
Police believe the family was travelling from Tea Tree to Jarra Jarra outstation, intending to meet up with family. It was a trip they would never complete.
Quite apparently an unroadworthy vehicle with a flat tyre and out of fuel.
The abandoned car was 18 kilometres from Jarra Jarra, while the 4 bodies were found 4.5 kilometres away from the car, suggesting the group attempted to walk to find help. The investigation now turns to how and why this tragedy happened and supporting a community in mourning.
It's not only heartbreaking for that community, it's heartbreaking for the broader community. Equally the emergency service family that responded.
Communities here in the Central Desert region are understandably devastated by this incident, and the general feeling now is to make local education a priority around bush travel, including letting someone know exactly where you're going and when, and to take plenty of water. The families of the deceased now await the coroner's report. Katrina Bevan, ABC News, Woollahra.
The ABC has had a look inside Dondale Youth Detention Centre 3 days on from the violent riots that shut the facility down. One section was brought back online this afternoon, with work being done to restore the remainder of the centre.
The aftermath of Tuesday's riot. Blackened walls, broken windows and rubble. Evidence of an explosive 8-hour standoff. The education unit bore the brunt of angry youths inside the Dondale Detention Centre.
There's a huge amount of infrastructure staff that are out there to get the facility up and running as quickly as possible.
There will be daily checks of the detainees' conditions while they remain at the Darwin Police Watch House.
They don't have pillows, they don't have sheets, they're forced to toilet in front of each other. I mean, this is draconian stuff, and it's the opposite of what the Royal Commission really called on us as a community to do.
The Minister in charge of Territory Families, the portfolio that oversees youth detention, has returned to Alice Springs.
As Minister, we are absolutely taking responsibility for the failings of the system by focusing on what the solutions are to the issues that we know.
Despite extensive damage from fire, water and smoke destroying the majority of F Block, the Northern Territory Government hopes to bring most of the youth detainees back to the centre by the weekend. A group of 5 detainees who were the alleged orchestrators of the riot on Tuesday night will have their management plans reassessed, but it's unclear what they will be.
We're certainly looking at the complex management arrangements around them, because it's about making sure when kids go to Dondale that they leave as better people, not better criminals.
Independent Terry Mills says the community is calling for change.
What they want to see is now corrections is now going to take a leadership role in managing these detainees, that they're going to see common sense and put the facility in an appropriate location outside of the industrial area.
Children's advocates don't want a repeat of the past.
Corrections was the regime that has put us in the position that we're in today. And again, corrections has a role, but for adults.
Many are desperate to find a solution for a system that's falling apart. Shani Wellington, ABC News.
Scott Morrison's shrugging off Malcolm Turnbull's return to the full glare of public attention and has dismissed his suggestion the government's racked by factionalism and bullying. In an hour-long ABC broadcast, the former Prime Minister's named the 9 ministers he blames most for destroying his leadership. But Mr Morrison insists his government is working and can win the next election. Political editor Andrew Probyn is at Parliament House.
Prime Minister, why was Malcolm Turnbull wrong?
It's the question that still haunts.
Malcolm Turnbull isn't running. I'm running. Bill Shorten's running. And here's the... Now you've asked me the question. You've got to let me answer.
Oh, okay. On the far side. OK, thank you.
From the sidelines came the sidelined, but with no more light to shed.
Why aren't you still Prime Minister?
And that's the question I can't answer, of course. The only people that can answer that are the people that engineered the coup. They're people like Peter Dutton and Tony Abbott and Greg Hunt and Matthias Cormann.
Malcolm Turnbull names the 4 main assassins in that mad week in August. His failed challenger, the long-time rival, the health minister and his one-time protector-in-chief.
I did not anticipate that people would act, particularly cabinet ministers, would act so self-destructively.
Well, they've got to be responsible for their actions. They made a decision about not supporting Malcolm, and they have to be responsible for that.
And so why did they get rid of him?
Well, you have to ask them that.
I certainly did not engineer any coup.
Although he went no closer to explaining why it happened than on the day itself.
It became obvious this week, sadly, that the Liberal Party hadn't united sufficiently behind Malcolm Turnbull.
And the deposed says he knows why.
What you've seen increasingly is the right saying, if you don't, even if they're not in a majority, if you don't give us what we want, we'll blow the show up.
Malcolm Turnbull may not have taken any blame for what happened to him, but he did identify the threat posed by the struggle between the Conservative and moderate wings of the Liberal Party. That struggle isn't any closer to being resolved under Scott Morrison, even if weapons have been temporarily sheathed. As reconciliation of sorts comes from an unusual corner.
And I'd just like to say to my departed colleague, Mr Turnbull, we think you've still got a role to play, not in a partisan fashion, but perhaps providing some opportunities to extend the case for Australia overseas.
But then again, winners often have most to give. Andrew Probyn, ABC News, Canberra.
The former New South Wales Labor leader is under intense pressure tonight to quit the party and back down from his threat to sue the ABC over claims he put his hand down the dress of a journalist. Luke Foley has denied the allegations made by ABC journalist Ashley Raper. She's received near unanimous support from across the political divide, including the Deputy Labor leader Michael Daly. Late today, Luke Foley said he would not recontest the next election. Political reporter Bridget Glanville has more.
Labor MPs today were unequivocal in their support for ABC journalist Ashley Raper.
She was dragged into this in more than one way. Her statement was very carefully considered. I believe Ashley.
Now that Ashley has come forward and indicated her position and explained what happened, my thoughts are with her and I will do whatever I can to support her.
Her courageous statement yesterday was one of the bravest things I've seen in New South Wales politics.
Miss Raper accused former Labor leader Luke Foley of putting his hand down her dress and inside her underwear at a parliamentary Christmas party 2 years ago. Mr Foley said the allegations were false but stood down as leader, then signalling his intent to sue the ABC for defamation.
Nothing good will come of it. It will be damaging for everyone, particularly for Ashley Raper, and I think Luke should carefully reconsider whether he wants to take those legal proceedings or not.
But there was anger too towards the government, aimed at Corrections Minister David Elliott, who used parliamentary privilege to raise the allegations.
Parliamentary privilege is a privilege not to be abused. This woman did not want these comments and these allegations to be made public.
Today, David Elliott released a short statement. This has clearly been a difficult time for the journalist. I have long held concerns over the character of the alternate Premier. To that end, it was never my intent to cause distress for the journalist.
I've expressed my absolute disappointment that her ability to control the issue as she wanted to was taken away from her.
But there was no sign her minister would be punished.
Today is not the day to get political, OK? Thank you.
The ABC released a statement on behalf of journalist Sean Nichols, who witnessed the alleged incident. He's denied a report that he leaked the details to a Liberal politician, saying it's an outrageous slur on my integrity. For the record, I fully support Ashley's account of what happened. Luke Foley will not be recontesting his seat of Auburn, but there are still some calls to expel him from the party.
In terms of Mr Foley, that is a matter for the New South Wales State Labor Party and the caucus and Mr Foley.
The Labor caucus will meet tomorrow to choose a new leader who'll have just 5 months to rescue the party before they head into the next state election in March next year. Bridget Glanville, ABC News, Sydney.
Federal government officials have been discussing the option of using old defence houses to ease appalling conditions in a remote Aboriginal community. But some Borroloola residents say they don't want discarded defence homes and instead are demanding new long-term housing.
Residents in the remote community of Borroloola say they've been waiting far too long for housing improvements.
The house is just maybe it's there from 34 years from where I'm staying. The house is just about to fall now.
Tony Abbott visited Borroloola in September and this week said he was shocked by what he saw.
The housing in Borroloola is appalling, worst I've seen anywhere in remote Australia, and I'm pleased to say that there is a new initiative in preparation for housing in Borroloola.
The ABC understands federal officials raised the option of using a dozen former RAAF homes during a meeting with Territory government representatives this week. They said the old defence homes could act as interim housing while the NT government builds new homes in the town. The NT officials responded by saying the plan wasn't viable.
These houses were deemed unlivable so many years ago, only recently, and for them to now be relocated to a place like Borroloola, I'm calling on the federal government to explain, are these houses now livable?
A spokesman for the Indigenous Affairs Minister says that no former defence houses have been purchased and that the government's still consulting with the community and the Northern Land Council to determine the best plan. Some Borroloola residents have welcomed the idea of using ex-defence homes, saying any housing is better than none. But others say it's an insulting option.
Tony Abbott shouldn't be putting that old rusty house. We need a good house for our children's health and our people.
She says the government funding promised for housing a decade ago should finally be used.
Give us the $15 million and start building a good house. We're not an animal. We're a human being just like you.
The federal government is yet to say when it will reveal its housing plan for Borroloola. Jono Gibson, ABC News.
A solar battery that has the capacity to provide 10% of Alice Springs' total power load began operations this morning. Many of the Territory's energy experts say this will help herald a new age of renewable energy in the town. But not everyone is so optimistic.
The government-owned corporation responsible for keeping the lights on think this new piece of technology bears comparison to Elon Musk's mega battery in South Australia.
Comparatively, this battery energy storage system will have far more impact on this grid than the 100 megawatt system in South Australia.
This battery captures energy from solar panels so it can be distributed when the sun's not shining.
We've had a whole range of experts from across Australia here this week absolutely saying that Alice Springs can be nation leading in this area because we have got a small grid that can take a lot of solar, that we've got the technology going into it, cutting edge technology, and a willingness to push the boundaries.
This group of experts is mapping out a solar future for Alice Springs using pipe cleaners, and they share the government's enthusiasm about the town's solar future.
Alice Springs is a microcosm of the national electricity market, and whilst it's a small grid, there are a number of characteristics that position it well to be a really useful reference site.
But it's not just batteries the Territory government's investing in. They've also spent $75 million upgrading this fossil fuel-powered power station, which they say will run for 25 years. Some say this is a necessary transition resource, but others aren't so sure.
Every investment in fossil fuels is an investment that could have gone in renewable energy. It's a climate emergency. We need to keep half of known gas reserves in the ground.
Though some say change needs to happen gradually for it to be effective.
It took us 150 years, 140 years to build a power system that we knew and understood, and we're now trying to change that in a tenth of the time.
Finding the right balance to determine the city's energy future. Oliver Gordon, ABC News, Alice Springs.
And in breaking news, police say a man has died after he was shot by police following an incident in Melbourne's Bourke Street this afternoon. Police allege he punched an officer before producing a knife and attempting to attack them. The man was shot in the chest. Police also say they're treating the attack as a terrorism incident. The man and his relatives were known to Victorian and federal authorities. Traditional owners in Jabiru are celebrating after their native title rights and interests were recognised under Australian law. Today, a special on-country hearing was held to present the Mirarr traditional owners with hard copies of the native title determination over areas of the Jabiru township.
The Mirarr have lived and used the land near the World Heritage listed Kakadu National Park for 65,000 years. Today, a native title claim lodged 2 decades ago was finally recognised by the Australian Federal Court.
Today it was really important for us, Mirarr. We are really happy and proud that we got back our country for the native title, and we are all really excited and really happy.
The claim has been led by Elder Yvonne Margarula.
Yes.
Yeah, thank
you very much. You've done a marvellous job.
And recognises Mirarr rights and interests over 13 square kilometres of the Jabiru township.
We're not giving something that wasn't there. The court is simply recognising that which has always been there.
Today's ceremony means the Mirarr claim is now recognised under Australian law. The Mirarr now want to take a leading role in the future of a changing Jabiru.
Us and our next generation are going to have a better, bright future for this town of Jabiru.
The company operating the nearby Ranger uranium mine has been leasing the land for the past 38 years. Production at the mine is expected to cease in 2021. So will the Jabiru township's role in servicing the mine. It's the Mirarr wish to help transition Jabiru from a mining town to a tourism and regional hub, using the full effect of the Australian Native Title Act. Diana Damjanovic, ABC News, Jabiru.
A former US Marine has killed 12 people at a bar in Southern California in the latest mass shooting in America. Some survivors and one of the victims had escaped last year's massacre in Las Vegas. Mass shootings are now so common, a growing number of Americans are experiencing them more than once. North America correspondent James Glenday reports.
A massacre in what is supposedly one of the safest cities in the United States.
I just started hearing these big pops, pop, pop, pop.
A lone attacker fired his legally bought high-powered handgun into a popular country music bar.
Country, we got multiple people down. We need a lot of ambulances first.
Heavily armed police swarmed to the scene as the large crowd of mostly university students scrambled to escape.
So then our friends got the bar stools and they started slamming it against the window so we could get out.
Survivors are forever scarred by what they saw.
He shot the cashier, just a young girl.
Families shattered by an act of unspeakable violence.
And we did just get the news that he was one of the 11 that were hit and killed last night. His name was Cody Kaufman, my firstborn son.
I don't want prayers. I don't want thoughts. I want gun control, and I hope to God nobody else sends me any more prayers. I want gun control.
The gunman was identified as former Marine Ian David Long, who had served in Afghanistan and may have been suffering from PTSD. Among his victims, a police officer, just months from retirement.
He went into that bar protecting, serving others, and making sure everybody else can go home. And unfortunately, he's not going home.
The slain officer was honoured as a hero. A large convoy surrounded the car carrying his coffin. State politicians say Washington must toughen gun laws.
You can't go to a bar, a nightclub. Can't go to church, synagogue. I mean, it's insane.
In the capital, President Donald Trump ordered all flags to be lowered to half-mast and offered his condolences. But unsurprisingly, this latest mass shooting hasn't sparked any serious discussion here about gun control. And that's despite advocates saying this is the 6th such incident in a little over a week. James Glenday, ABC News, Washington.
Australia's batting has again failed to fully challenge the South Africans in the second match of the one-day international series at the Adelaide Oval. Alex Carey top scored, but there were no half-centuries as the Proteas bowlers dismissed Australia inside the 49th over. The Australian attack, though, has hit back.
A small crowd and low expectations for the Australians, but having been sent in, they set about the task in style.
Really good shot for Travis Head.
It looked a pitch perfect for batting, but looks can be deceiving.
That's close. It's hit him in lines. Back leg, give him.
Like Travis Head, fellow left-hander Shaun Marsh looked comfortable, and the run rate was nearly 6 and over before the South Africans struck again.
Oh, big nick and gone.
Skipper Aaron Finch appeared content to play the correct shot and settled in to watch the power of Chris Lynn take over.
That's what you're after from Chris Lynn, one step down the wicket.
Partnerships were the key, but the Australians just couldn't establish a big one. Lynn did his best to up the tempo, smashing 4 boundaries in consecutive deliveries off Kahiso Rabada, only for the Proteas' #1 paceman to ultimately win the battle.
There's a big shout and he's gone.
Wicketkeeper Alex Carey showed some nice footwork as Australia climbed beyond the 150 mark, only to crumble, losing 5 wickets for 38 in 11 overs, 2 of those claimed by a rejuvenated Dale Steyn.
Straight up in the air, and the catch is taken.
Some late hitting made the score more competitive, but with the Australians staring down an 8th consecutive one-day loss, they were once again relying on their bowlers. It wasn't an especially good start as the Proteas chased a series-winning victory, but a breakthrough came in the 5th over.
Zampa takes it.
Never ones to be intimidated, the South Africans hit back, more than matching the asking rate. But a misjudged run, and there was a little bit of hope for the home side. Neil Cross, ABC News, Adelaide.
Now to the weather. Tonight's viewer photo has been sent in by Vlad Rahosa. There were showers and thunderstorms over western and northern parts of the top end today, a mostly sunny day elsewhere. It was 34 degrees in Darwin today, 38 the top in Bachelor. 41 today in Katherine, Nhulunbuy got up to 35 and Borroloola hit 41. Alice Springs topped 27 degrees, Uluru 31 and Tennant Creek 34. The highest rainfall in the 24 hours to 9 a.m. was 6 millimetres in Darwin. Around Australia today, Sydney and Canberra hit 21 degrees, Brisbane got up to 25 and Perth had a top of 34. On the satellite, shower and thunderstorm activity extended across the Gulf of Carpentaria and over northwestern parts of the country and inland Western Australia. Low-level cloud can be seen over the southeastern coastline. The rest of the continent is mostly cloud-free. On the synoptic chart, a trough near the base of the top end remains almost stationary and extends across inland Queensland and the west coast of Western Australia. Interstate tomorrow, some cloud in Perth, Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne, sunny for Canberra and Adelaide. To our north, thunderstorms in Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok and Singapore, rain in Dili, cloudy in Jakarta and Bali. Around the territory tomorrow, 28 degrees the top in Alice Springs and 32 for Uluru, 35 in Tennant Creek, Elliot 38. Further north, a top of 41 degrees in Katherine and Borroloola tomorrow, a top of 33 in Nhulunbuy and 34 in Maningrida. And in the west, a top of 36 degrees expected in Wadeye, Jabiru a top of 40 and it should get up to 35 degrees in Darwin tomorrow. The afternoon low tide will be at 1:41, high tide at 8:10, seas off Darwin to 1 metre with winds to 15 knots. The sun will rise tomorrow at 10 minutes past 6 and the UV rating will peak in the extreme. And looking ahead, thunderstorms for the next week and the top temperatures hovering around 35 degrees in the top end. In Alice Springs, a sunny weekend, then some cloud and hot days on Monday and Tuesday. And if you missed any part of tonight's news, you can watch it anytime via the ABC's iView service. Just go to iview.abc.net.au, type in ABC News, select the Northern Territory and watch your local nightly news on TV, online and mobile. And that's ABC News for this Friday night. Have a great weekend. Good night.